Darkcast Network, bringing our indie podcasts out of the shadows.
Just before we dive into this week's episode, here's a promo.
Ooh, I've been dying to try this place.
Oh my god, me too. I've heard such good things about it.
Welcome to the Crime Diner. I'm Cindy. I'll be cooking for you this evening. Here are your menus.
Ooh, what are you thinking about getting?
I don't know, murder with a side of cannibalism? What about you?
Ooh, that sounds good. I'm torn between historical mayhem and the social injustice, maybe?
Oh.
I just want to let you know that each episode comes with dinner, dessert, and a specialty drink chosen by yours truly.
Wine Dine and Storytime has had a makeover, and we invite you to slide into the booth with us at the Crime Diner, where each week we will discuss a crime over dinner, drinks, and dessert. See you there!
Welcome to CrimeDivers. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
And welcome to today's episode.
Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode, which is a Laura-sode today.
It is.
So, where in the world are we?
We're in USA.
And what is the name of your episode?
It's called The Bomb Hostage.
Oh, okay. This could be interesting.
Well, I think it is actually.
Right, okay, well, do you want to dive in?
Let's dive in. So today's case takes place in Pennsylvania in a city called Erie. And I thought,
it's
Erie. Quite an eerie case, so it's quite a fitting place for this one. So yes, in a place called Erie. So on the 28th of August 2003, police in Erie received a 911 call of a bank robbery that was going on as the call was made. So obviously the robber was obviously in there and somebody had phoned to say.
So it was actually happening
when
he
it was
phoned.
happening, yeah. A short, bald, middle-aged man had hobbled into the bank just a few minutes earlier with his walking stick. And he just seemed like a regular customer, well, apart from the fact that he had something unusual around his neck that he had covered up with a t-shirt, which we'll get onto in a minute.
Okay.
But yeah, so he just looked quite normal apart from that. He made his way to the desk and he slid the bank teller a note that read, "Gather employees with access codes to vault and work fast to fill bag with $250,000. You only have 15 minutes.
Oh, scary.
He then pulled down the neck of his t-shirt, because obviously at this point I'm showing...
It was up.
Yeah, it was actually
around
part of
his
his neck.
neck.
So he's actually pulled...
You do realise this is a podcast.
I know, but I'm telling you what it is. You can see
You're
what I'm
supposed to
doing.
be telling our listeners.
I know. But anyway, he pulled down the neck of his t-shirt to reveal what he had been hiding this whole time. It was a big metal collar around his neck with a bomb strapped to it.
Good.
He then lifted his walking stick to show it wasn't a walking stick.
Okay.
It was actually a gun.
A gun.
It was a shotgun that had been disguised, but not very well, may I add, because I've seen a picture of it.
Right.
But actually no one had noticed, so...
Well, I probably wouldn't be really paying attention to
No,
some old
probably
man
not.
just hobbling in with his walking stick.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I say, I saw a picture of it. So I suppose if you're looking for it, you could tell instantly that it's not a walking stick. But I suppose, if you're just walking in and people are minding their own business, probably didn't realise.
Nobody will be paying attention.
Exactly. So bank staff, they are trained just to hand over the money. They're not meant to put up a fight or anything like that. It's not worth losing their lives over. So
No, definitely not.
basically, they start going into the back to get the money. But obviously, if anybody, not that we all know, but we can suspect that in a bank it's not just a case of, let's go and get the money and there it is. So it's not just as easy as opening a door to a vault. It's very secure. There's obviously many safety features in play. So, of course, there's no way that they could gather that much money in 15 minutes. It's just physically not going to happen.
You look like you've got a bruise on your cheek.
Funnily enough, my daughter said that to me yesterday as well, but I think I've always had this mark. There's no bruise.
Oh, she's just dirty.
I'm just I had a shower this morning, thank you very much.
No, I'm just looking at you there and it doesn't look like you've got a bruise.
My daughter did say that. She's like, "Mummy, you've got a bruise on your cheek." And I'm like, I haven't. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway.
Try washing better.
Maybe I will, yeah. Thanks. So back to the case.
Sorry, I got distracted. Oh, she's putting her hair over her face now.
Look at my face. Anyway, right, so there was no way that they were going to gather the money in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The staff, of course, tried to remain calm, realising that they couldn't fulfil his request, so they went over to the man telling him that, sorry, like, we cannot get you the money this quick. But the bank robber seemed fairly calm, like, he didn't seem tense or aggressive at all. You know, you wouldn't think he was just trying to rob a bank.
With a bomb round his neck.
Yeah, exactly. He was literally just standing like a normal customer, just looking around, you know, like, all right.
Okay.
At one point, he even grabbed a lollipop out of the bowl of sweets that was on the counter. So, you know, he just really wasn't
They have sweets in the bank.
Well, in this bank they do.
Right, we better get on the phone to our bank.
Exactly. But yeah, so, you know, he just didn't seem bothered at all. So in the end, he just said to staff, you know, just give me as much money as you can then.
I thought you were just going to say, oh, doesn't matter. See you later. I'll come back in like half an hour. So you got money then.
They were just like, just give me as much money as you can get your hands on, basically. So they did, you know, have some cash. So they filled a bag, and he just leaves the bank.
Okay.
You know, so he didn't even have any hostages or anything like that. And so I mean, people were just, nobody was like under any stress or anything. Just giving the money. So I think the figure is that they managed to give him $8,702.
Okay.
Exact. So that's what he had actually got in the bag. So nowhere near the 250,000 that he'd asked for. But like I said, he'd been so calm. You know, he didn't even seem to care that other customers had sneaked out the back and called the police. There was no hostage situations. You know, it just...
This is weird.
Yeah, it gets weirder, trust me. So within 10 to 15 minutes of leaving the bank, he was caught by the police. I think that he must have still been in the area. He hadn't got very far and obviously hadn't been hard to track down. He was actually stopped in a car park of an Eyeglass World, which will be like a Specsavers to us.
Oh, right.
But it's called an Eyeglass World.
Where you get your glasses.
Where you get your glasses, yes. So the man, he'd actually got out of the car, still with the bomb around his neck. And the police arrest him, but of course they were very worried about the bomb around his neck. So, you know, they knew nothing about it. You know, it could have been fake, of course, but it could also have been very, very real.
I know, I was just wondering if it was fake, because he seemed awfully calm.
Yeah, and they didn't know how sensitive the bomb itself was.
Yeah.
And they didn't know if it had the power to detonate at any time. So, of course, the police needed the bomb squad. So, in the meantime, they had to make sure that everyone around was safe, because, of course, they've got to treat it like it is a real bomb. They sat the guy down. There's actually a photo of him that I've seen. And he's sitting just cross-legged with his, like, on the ground, cross-legged with his arms handcuffed behind his back, and the bomb's around his neck. And they actually set him in front of one of the police cars, and then they all moved away, just in case, you know, that the bomb could go off any second. They moved to a safe distance. So, of course, the police, you know, they're still waiting on the bomb squad coming, so they started shouting questions at him from a distance, you know, trying to find out what was going on, who he was. And the guy, he was actually quite cooperative. Like, you know, he wasn't shy to say anything about him.
Has he been, like, I don't know, smoking weed or something? Because he just seems really laid back.
Exactly. So, you know, the police, they quickly learned a lot about him. So, his name was Brian Wells.
Right.
He said that he was a pizza delivery driver. And actually, I didn't obviously call it this, but this case is also referred as the pizza bombing, I think, the pizza bombing.
Okay.
But obviously I have to call it something else. But I think famously or infamously it's called it.
But how is it a pizza bombing?
Well, because he was a pizza delivery driver.
But then it'd be the pizza man.
Yeah, well, I don't know. But anyway, that's why I didn't call it that. So he was a pizza delivery driver in an area, and he'd been called out that day to deliver a pizza. But when he had got in there, the people he was delivering to abducted him. So this is what he's telling the police.
Oh, right, okay.
They jumped him and put this collar bomb around his neck and instructed him to go and rob the bank, or they would blow up the bomb around the neck and kill him.
And yet he's all very calm about this. Okay.
Brian told the police he didn't know how long he had left, he didn't know how much time was on the bomb, and he was scared for his life. He was begging them to do something about it and try and get the bomb off him. The police were obviously very torn about the situation because they wanted to believe Brian. And a lot of them did to a degree, but also you can never be too sure if it was maybe like a suicide bombing. You know, what if it was all part of his plan to get the police to come over and try and take it off him, and he detonates it. So, you know, they're very conflicted about what's...
Yeah, never trust anybody.
Exactly. So in the meantime, the police, you know, they asked more questions. They asked him, you know, who had done this to him, and the only description he could give was that it was 3 black men, and that and that was it. You couldn't give any other description. It was for
Okay.
3 black men. So police kept asking him more questions, but Brian was getting more and more frantic. He was telling things like, why isn't someone coming to, get this off me? Why aren't you helping me? I don't have a lot of time. It's going to go off. He kept assuring the police and, shouting, I'm not lying.
Usually when somebody says they're not lying, they usually are though.
Well, that's what I think. So at 3:18 p.m, the collar that was around Brian's neck started ticking.
Oh.
If this was a real bomb, it sounded like it was about to go off. Witnesses said that when the ticking started, the look on Brian's face was just sheer panic. Like sheer realisation, like, oh shit, something's happening here.
Uh-huh.
He started moving around desperately, trying to get himself out of the collar, but of course there was no way that was coming off his neck. Like, there was no way.
Yes.
It was there. And within 10 to 20 seconds of the collar starting to tick, it detonated and killed Brian Wells. There was a small explosion and then Brian fell backwards. He'd been sitting down, so he's still sitting down, it had gone off.
Right.
And he'd fallen backwards. So the rest of his body fell backwards and there was a huge hole blown in his chest.
Oh my God.
So it didn't blow his head off.
Right.
It just had blown a big massive hole
So
in
it
his
doesn't
chest.
sound like a massive explosion then.
No, it wasn't. It didn't do
Did it
any
not-
harm to anybody else.
Yeah,
it was
it was
literally, it was only himself. There was no damage. It was just, it blew a hole in his chest.
Alright, okay.
So tragically, just 2 minutes later, the bomb squad actually arrived,
Ah, too late.
who could have saved his life and possibly removed the bomb. So of course, Brian had died and his body was transported to the morgue with a device still around his neck. But the bomb squad actually had a look at it,
I'm saying, is it still active?
No, well, they had a look at it and they actually still couldn't work out how to get it off him. It was so well put on. So in Brian's autopsy, they actually had to decapitate him just so they could get the device off to study it. So there was no way that they could have got this bomb off.
But could they not have got some machinery that cuts through metal or
I
whatever?
don't know, they maybe couldn't do that because they might have thought it would have set it off, maybe. I don't know, so maybe they didn't think to do that.
There's
I don't
obviously
know.
a reason.
Yeah, but basically there was no way that they would have got this off Brian whilst he was still alive.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it was very clearly homemade, the bomb. Police could tell that a lot of research had went into it. This was someone that was very good with tools because apparently they had used professional machinery as well. So police, they were really taken aback by this case. A bank robbery, an abduction, and now what looked like human murder as well. And this all happened in the space of 2 hours. So it was like, it went from one thing to a whole other thing. So the natural place to start with the investigation was obviously Brian Wells. He was 46 years old at the time of his death. He seemed to have a pretty average life from what police were told. He had dropped out of school very young. He'd never completed his education. He did want to be a mechanic, but he ended up being a pizza delivery guy.
Okay.
He lived alone in a rented apartment with three cats. Didn't really like technology much, so he didn't have a TV or a computer. He just, he kept himself to himself. He was just quite a quiet, reserved. He was just a quiet, reserved guy. He was close with his mother. He would cook them both a meal every single week, so she would come around once a week and have a meal. Brian was never he had never had a romantic partner in his life, not for the lack of trying though, as he always wanted a wife and a family, etc. But the closest thing that he came to was paying for sex workers. For this.
That's not even close.
Well, that's what I mean. That's the only kind of relationship or sexual relationship we had. I know that doesn't actually good, did it?
He wanted a wife and kids and the closest thing he got was to pay him for a sex worker. No, that's not even close.
Well, clearly nobody wanted to be in a relationship with him naturally, so he had to pay, okay?
So that's how he got his sex. That's not close to getting a wife and
No,
kids.
okay, it's not right, okay. I should have worded that a bit better, but yeah, you're right. So anyway,
Sorry.
he had a favourite girl called Jessica Hoopsick. She was his favourite. I think he was actually in love with her. She was heavily addicted to cocaine. But he just seemed like a nice guy. He didn't have a criminal history or anything like that. But, he just paid for a sex worker and fell in love with her. And,
Okay.
So in 1993, so we'll go back a bit, he'd started working at Mamma Mia's Pizzeria in Erie, Pennsylvania. And at the time of this case, he had been working there for 10 years. And he really liked it there, so he wasn't going to leave. He was happy, just, that was what he did. So, back to, present day, on the day of his death, that started like any other day would. He would always go and get breakfast somewhere, usually at McDonald's. He liked to go and sit in there and read the morning news, and then from there he would head to work. So around 1:30 p.m. that day, he was at his work and the phone rang at the pizza place, and Brian's co-worker, Tony, picked it up. I think Tony was actually his boss. But anyway, he was trying to take an order, but he couldn't make out what the person was like saying on the phone. Like, he couldn't understand what they were saying.
Okay.
And he starts to get a bit frustrated, because you know what it's like when you're on the phone and you can't understand somebody.
Yeah.
So he starts to get a bit frustrated. So he actually ends up passing the phone to Brian and saying, here, can you see if you can understand this phone call? So Brian takes the phone call and he manages to like make some sense of it. So he grabs a bit of paper and pen, starts to write down the order, starts to write down the address. The customer had said that they were a construction crew working on a site and that they wanted 2 large sausage and pepperoni pizzas. And it was just to come to the site on 8631 Peach Street. So, Brian got the orders sorted, grabbed the orders and jumped in his car. And he drove off to go and deliver them. And that was the last time that any of his co-workers heard from him.
Okay.
So they were a bit worried, but they just thought, something's maybe just come up. They never thought that he would have been abducted or, nothing like that. They only found out when they actually saw the news later that day. As it had been a huge news story, that happened. Because, of course, bombing went off this guy.
Well, yeah, of course.
Massive news story. So that was obviously how his boss had found out.
Imagine seeing that on the news, that your co-workers just went away to deliver a pizza, and then however long later, you're watching the news and they've had a bomb and
I know.
They're dead.
It's scary, isn't it? So, of course, his boss was one of the first to be questioned by police. And he described Brian as easily led. He wasn't, the type to stand up for himself. He was a bit of a pushover, and he always followed instructions that he was given. So, and the police, at this point, the police, they didn't know whether Brian was a victim or had he just gone crazy. But his boss was like, nah, there's no way that Brian could have planned a bank robbery himself. There's just no way. There was another theory, obviously, that, as I said to you before, it could have been a suicide bombing. But the police searched Brian's home for evidence to support that theory, but they found nothing. Not a single thing. No plans, no tools, no notes, no chemicals, nothing. So Brian wasn't the planner of this.
Right, yeah.
So it was when the search extended to Brian's car that the last few hours of his life actually emerged. And it seemed that Brian had been sent on some sort of scavenger hunt via a number of handwritten letters from his abductors. The letters were all simply addressed to bomb hostage, and they gave strict instructions on how he could get the collar bomb off of him and how to survive this ordeal.
So that he really was abducted and stuff?
Well, so far.
Well, I'm not sure whether to feel guilty or not, because I thought he'd planned it all from the start, and I wasn't believing him.
Well, there's more.
So I'm not sure whether I feel guilty about thinking that about him now. Right, okay.
We'll just keep going, because
Okay.
this is where we're at the moment.
Okay, I'm confused.
Yeah. So they said that the only way to unlock the collar was through a series of keys and digits that he could collect if he followed every instruction that they gave him. So Brian had been instructed to rob multiple banks, and that bank had just been the first one that he'd been at.
Oh, so he wasn't very successful.
No. It wasn't just banks, though. There was actually a bunch of random stops along the way where they could collect, because he actually collected clues along the way, so he didn't get all the clues in one go. Let's say he's on a scavenger hunt.
It could be quite fun if it wasn't for the bomb.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the scavenger hunt bit sounds quite cool.
Yeah.
Just not with the bomb and robbing places.
So these letters were quite scary. They were very threatening, saying that he could be killed for practically everything. For example, if the abductor saw police cars or helicopters following him, they would kill him. If he tried tampering with the collar or trying to get off early, they would kill him. You get the picture.
Uh-huh.
It was, and it was booby trapped. They basically were saying to him, if you try to do anything, we'll just set this thing off.
Right.
So these people had totally thought of everything. They had scared Brian into complete submission, and he just read the letters and he followed them, because as his boss said, he just follows instructions, so he was just doing as he was told.
I think anybody would anyway, because...
Well, yeah, to be fair, I think I probably would as well. I mean, there was lots of threatening statements to remind Brian just how much was at stake.
Yeah.
At the end of one letter, written in capital letters, was written, "Act now, think later, or you will die."
Well, see, I think most people would be following the instructions with that, wouldn't they?
Yeah. But obviously, at this point, the police had already studied the bomb collar, so they actually knew that a lot of the claims in the letters were fake. They were false.
Right.
So the keyholes that were on the collar didn't actually connect to anything, so putting a key in them wasn't going to do anything. So they had lied to him on that.
Okay.
There was no booby traps anywhere on the collar either. There was no other way the bomb could go off other than the timer running out, because you know how it ticked and that's when it went off. So there was actually no way that if he had done any of those things, it wasn't booby trapped, basically.
Okay.
So the police realised that there would have been no way to get it off Brian, even if the bomb squad, like I said, had made it in time. Once it was round Brian's neck, it wasn't coming off, and as we know, they had to decapitate him. He was always going to die that day, sadly. Like, there was no way out for him. Like, he was always going to die.
Wow.
So the police themselves, they actually decided to follow the scavenger hunt.
Okay.
So Brian had been to the bank, and then had been told to go to a drive-through at a McDonald's, where there was a flower bed for his next clue. So there was like a flower bed in the drive-through, and I think it was like taped to a stone or something.
Yeah.
That was where the next clue was. So it seemed that he had made it there, and then he was heading to his next location, which was a wooded area, but that was when the police had intercepted him. So he'd been at the bank, made it to McDonald's drive-through, he was obviously heading to this wooded area where his next clue was, but that's when the police had got him. So nothing. There was nothing important. Nothing important had been at the drive-through, just to tell him where to go. So the police obviously went and followed the clue, and it was just a random dirt road with a road sign where the next clue was, but there was actually like an empty jar there, so it looks like there may have been a clue, but most likely the abductors knew Brian was dead by this point, so they would have been to remove it.
Yeah.
So as the police did the scavenger hunt, they realised that the amount of time that Brian's collar had on it, it would have gone off before he'd even reached the second or third clue. Like, you know, there was no chance he would have actually got to the end to get the keys or digits like the letters had promised anyway. Because bear in mind, they'd intercepted him, and obviously the thing, so he would never have actually managed to do the whole scavenger hunt anyway. So it just seems like
pointless.
Yeah, pointless basically. So the police investigated to find out where the phone call had came from. So remember, you got a phone call to the pizza place.
Yeah.
So that obviously
with the order.
So that had come from a payphone on Peach Street. So it sounds like Brian's story was checking out at this point. You know, he'd obviously got the phone call from Peach Street. That's where he was delivering pizzas. But police, you know, they had no leads, no witnesses, no one had seen anything. So the case actually ended up going cold for a few weeks. But 3 weeks later, they received a call from a man called Bill Rothstein. He told them to go down to a particular address on Peach Street that Brian was abducted on. He told them to go into the garage and look in the big chest freezer at the back because they would find a frozen human body. He said it was his house that he was sending them to.
The caller's house.
Yeah. So Bill Rothstein, he made the phone call. It was actually his own house that he's sending the police to, where they're going to find a frozen human body. And he said, the body had been stored, but he hadn't killed the person. He said it was his friend who had murdered the person, and his friend's name was Marjorie Deal Armstrong, and the frozen body was her boyfriend. She had murdered him on the 13th of August as he was sleeping. Apparently Marjorie had grabbed a shotgun and shot him several times.
Can I just say I'm confused as to where this is going?
Mm-hmm. It'll all make sense in a minute. So that had been 2 weeks before the Brian Wells bomb incident, though.
Right.
So that obviously she'd killed.
That she'd killed him,
yeah.
And the body's been in the freezer ever since.
Yeah.
At this guy's house.
Yeah. So Bill and Marjorie were actually both arrested because at the end of the day, the body's in his house.
Yeah.
She's the one that's obviously meant to have killed him. So Bill was willing to tell them everything on the chance that they might let him off a little bit because he had nothing to do with the actual murder. Now, as you just said, you're confused. You're probably wondering what this has to do with Brian Wells. But
exactly.
Trust me, it's going to connect up. You're gonna understand why I'm telling you about this.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. So Marjorie was fuming that she'd been arrested. So she blamed it all on Bill. Apparently, she was a very mentally ill woman. She had bipolar personality disorder, was described as a narcissist. At least 5 of her romantic relationships had ended with her partner mysteriously dying. So there was the freezer guy, there was another fella hit his head off a coffee table and died from a brain trauma. One guy split up with her, then weeks later hung himself, and another, which she was arrested for, died of multiple gunshot wounds, but she was actually acquitted of that murder because she said that she had shot him in self-defence. But it was proof, though, that she'd killed at least one of her husbands before.
Okay. Lovely woman.
So why was Bill harbouring a dead body in his freezer? He said that he had nothing to do with the murder, but that he had a soft spot for Marjorie. The two of them had dated like a long time ago. They'd been engaged, but Marjorie had called it off. So Bill had been, and probably still, was truly in love with her, so she had basically used that to her advantage.
You would think he would be scared of her with all these other men dying.
Exactly. But he even melted down the gun that she used. It all started to get to him though, and he felt like so much guilt. So that's when he actually decided to call the police about it. I think the thing that sent him over the edge was when she mentioned about grinding the body up.
Oh, okay.
Apparently he had actually considered suicide and had written a note as he didn't want Marjorie to get in trouble. The suicide note backed up all his claims, but there was one more thing on the suicide note that was even more suspicious.
Okay.
His suicide note starts with, this has nothing to do with the Wells case. So Brian Wells. So that's what his note starts with. This has nothing to do with the Wells case. So up until now, there was no link between the cases.
I'm sure if somebody was to start reading that, they'd be like, right, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So there'd been no link to these. These were like two separate cases. But the fact that he's mentioned, this has nothing to do with the Brian Wells case,
made them think, it is.
So it was very obvious what this note was referring to, as Brian Wells had been abducted on that same street,
right,
just 3 weeks before. So clearly there was a link. So of course, police quizzed Bill and asked, well, what are your links to the Brian Wells case? Like, why did you write this? What does this mean? Trying to figure out. But he actually kept tight-lipped. He just kept saying no comment. And it was obviously very frustrating for the police, as there was no obvious links between the two cases, so they couldn't understand at this point, well, why the hell have you mentioned this person's name, but now you're not going to tell us anything about it, so that's like really pissing us off. So the police, they had to do more digging, so they actually went and searched Bill's home, and they found a ton of machinery and professional tools. So this guy had all the stuff to make a homemade collar bomb. So they now believed that Bill could have been capable of making a bomb and somehow has a connection to the Brian Wells case. So at the time of Brian Wells' death, Bill was living with Marjorie and another man called Floyd Stockton. This guy was on the run from the police after sexually assaulting a young woman with learning disabilities, which apparently Bill knew about. But randomly had just so happened to have moved out on the day of Brian Wells' death.
Okay.
So Marjorie, going back to Marjorie, she was charged and sent to prison for the murder of her boyfriend.
The guy in the freezer.
Yeah. She'd been given a minimum of 7 years to life, right, in a maximum security prison.
Okay.
Annoyingly, Bill passed away from cancer within a week of ending up in hospital. So I don't know if he actually
within a week of
he ended up in hospital and then he died within a week. So he obviously was ill. We ended up in hospital and he died within a week of being in hospital.
So he died just after this, then.
Yeah. So not long after this all happened, he actually died.
Okay. I like how you said annoyingly.
Well, yeah, because obviously, you clearly
sorry, it's not usually annoyingly he died. It's not usually something you would say.
Well, you want to know what's happened.
Yeah, I know.
Got some connections, so obviously he died of cancer. But obviously we don't know if he knew he actually had cancer or not, because we were kind of wondering if that's why he'd start to talk about stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was just
maybe
wondering.
He knew, but we're not sure. I'm not sure if he actually knew or if it was just like a really sudden thing, because he obviously became very ill, ended up in hospital and died within a week. So I don't know, if he'd had cancer.
I mean, that can happen.
Yeah, it can happen. So I don't know if.
I was just wondering if maybe he knew that he was dying and he wanted to get it off his chest.
Yeah. So now Marjorie decides to talk. She's decided to start talking about stuff, because she hadn't really said much up to this point. So she agreed that Bill told the truth and blamed her mental illness. She actually hated it in prison, but she was so desperate to get out. So she wrote a polite letter that she was willing to share some information about Brian Wells with the police if they were willing to put her in a lower security prison. So very much she'd been in a max security.
Yeah.
So she was basically saying, I'll tell you some stuff if you move me to a lower
to make a deal.
Prison. She said that Bill was involved and also a man called Kenneth Barnes. They did a search of her house and they found a handwritten letter by Marjorie to the exact bank that Brian had tried to rob. She was very angry in the letter to her, and it was to do with her bank account that apparently she shared with her dad, that her dad had been spending a large amount of money from it and she wasn't happy, so she'd written the bank a very angry letter to say that she wasn't happy, that her dad...
But it's her dad's account as well, so what's the bank going to do about it?
Well, exactly, but she was obviously very angry about the fact her dad was spending all this money. But anyway, she hadn't managed to send it because obviously the letter was still in her house. But the letter proved that she had a bit of beef with the bank. They let her prove she was pissed off with the bank.
You'd think she would be pissed off with her dad for spending the money.
Yeah, but no, she was pissed off with the bank.
Okay.
So police are starting to believe that Marjorie and Bill are connected to the Brian Wells.
Yeah.
But obviously, to be honest, a couple of years had kind of passed by this point, and there still wasn't answers on it. So then police thought maybe they could actually solve this. So they actually go back and they looked at all the evidence again, so it's fresh in their minds. And they looked at body cam footage of when they went to arrest Bill in connection with the body in the freezer.
Right.
Because obviously at this point they didn't think of any connection between
that,
the Brian Wells one. So these Marjorie and Bill, they were like hoarders. Like their house was disgusting, you know, like a typical hoarder's house, just stacked with stuff everywhere. They actually noticed on the footage that there was diagrams on bits of paper. So they zoomed in and they saw arrows as being the same arrows that had been drawn on the bomb. And they also found a notebook that had pages torn out of it. So they used a technique where they lightly shade over the whole thing and it's able to reveal like indents of the last thing that was written. Yeah. But apparently there was nothing to do with the bombing, but it did show Bill's handwriting. So they compared that to the notes that they found in Brian Wells' car, and some of the notes matched Bill's handwriting.
Ah.
So now police knew that Bill had played a huge part, but as we know, he'd passed away. So they obviously kept on at Marjorie, but she wasn't saying much to the police, but she was to her inmates, who totally snitched on her. And that's actually how we know most of what has happened, is she couldn't keep her mouth shut. Like she wanted to brag about it to her inmates. She wouldn't want to tell the police, but she bragged to her inmates. So never trust a fellow inmate, because they'll do anything to get out of their situation.
Exactly.
So this is what we know from what she told her inmates. Is that Bill had built the bomb. Floyd Stockton, the one that had been on the run
for
the sex assault, he played a part. We're not sure, but we think he maybe had been the person to strap the bomb on Brian.
Right.
So, and Marjorie was the brains, and it was her idea to do the scavenger hunt. So
the brains.
Well, I mean, if you want to call it brains.
Right. Okay. She decided on the scavenger hunt.
Yeah, apparently. So police, of course, confronted Marjorie with all this new information that they'd got, but she denied it all. So she wasn't very helpful at that point. So police continued digging, and eventually pieced together themselves what had happened. So it all started with Marjorie. She was running out of money. She'd never had a job. She'd lived off her mum's inheritance because her mum had died. But she'd actually been from quite a wealthy family. Mm-hmm. So she wasn't going to get a job, as she had a bright idea to hire a hitman to kill her dad so that she could inherit his money, which I'm a bit confused about, because her dad had access to the bank account with her money, but yeah, he must have had his own money as well.
Yeah, he must have.
So she obviously wanted that money. So basically she was going to, hire a hitman to kill her dad. So she got in contact with an old friend who was Kenneth Barnes. He was a crack dealer. So Marjorie approached him about her plan, but of course he wanted a lot of money, at least $200,000, otherwise he wouldn't even consider it. And of course Marjorie didn't have that money to hand. Mm-hmm. So now she needs to think of a way to get the money so that she can get her father killed, so that she can inherit around $200 million. So
$200 million?
Uh-huh.
How has her dad got 200 million?
Well, I don't know, they're very wealthy. I don't know the exact
Who
reason.
has 200 million?
Very wealthy people. So that's when...
Are you sure?
Well, that's what I read.
That's a lot of money.
I was said. So that's when she came up with the bomb idea. Mm-hmm. So they had a plan. Now they just needed to find someone to force to rob the bank. So Marjorie knew of a local prostitute. What was her name?
The one that he's in love with.
Jessica Hoopsick. Yeah. Remember her?
Yeah.
Kenneth was her dealer, and he asked her for a name of a man who was quite a pushover, someone who could easily be misled. And she didn't actually think it was like real. She thought it was just a bit of a joke. So she was like, oh yeah, this guy Brian Wells, like, he's quite a pushover, he'll probably do what you like. But then Marjorie put a spanner in the works, as she said that Brian was actually in on it as well. Mm-hmm.
I've just been confused with this whole thing.
Yeah, they were apparently, Brian thought that they were going to use a fake bomb. So Brian thought that he was going to survive. He thought that he would get the collar off and get a cut of the money, but it turns out the fake one was actually swapped for a real one on the day. So he was
in on it.
Yes, but
he thought it was a fake one.
I think that's why, I don't know if you remember when I said, like, when it starts ticking, like his face just sheer panic.
Yeah.
He's obviously, I'm wondering whether he's realised, oh my God, like...
Because he was calm up until then.
Yeah, you know, I said, you know, he was calm in the bank, he was quite calm in the police, he was quite happy to tell him stuff, so he obviously didn't think that this bomb was real, but actually it was. And then when he heard that ticking, he's thinking, oh my God, fuck. Like, this is real now. So Brian's actually friends and family still think that they actually still think he was innocent, because of course it's Marjorie's word against everyone's now.
Yeah.
But his family still believe, Brian's family still believe that he wasn't in on it, but obviously we can't know for sure whether he was in it or not. I mean, there's a chance he could have been because of maybe how calm he was. I mean, like I said, if he did think it was a fake one, I don't know. So I'm not sure whether it was. So Marjorie, she got found guilty of orchestrating the bombing, but none of them were actually charged for the murder of Brian Wells, as police believe that he was part of it. So nobody actually got charged for him, dying from the bomb exploding. But she was obviously charged for the orchestrating the bombing. And the charges that were conspiracy to commit an armed bank robbery and using a destructive device in a violent crime. Kenneth Barnes, he pled guilty as well, and he got 25 years, but he died in 2019, so he didn't really serve much. And going back to Marjorie, obviously I said she got like the minimum of 7 to 20 or 20 years, for killing her boyfriend, but apparently he had known too much about their bomb plan, and that's why she actually killed him, because of that.
All right.
That's what, I mean, I don't know if that's 100% fact, but apparently that's her motive for actually killing him, her boyfriend, because he obviously knew too much and must have disagreed with it.
Because I was going to say, look, if it was about money, you could have just gave him some money to shut him up, but then maybe if he was like, no, I'm going to grass you up.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why he was killed. But she was given a life sentence with a minimum of 30 years for her orchestration of the...
Okay.
But she actually passed away from breast cancer in 2017, age 68. So she didn't get to serve.
So basically, everybody's died now then?
Yeah, basically.
That was part of it? Because
Mm-hmm.
Brian...
Kenneth died.
Bill died. She's dead now, the boyfriend in the freezer. Yeah. So basically everybody that was involved with it is dead now.
Yeah, nobody's really serving.
So nothing good came out of that then.
Exactly.
So her dad's still alive though, and he's still got his money.
Yes, he's still got his money.
Well, that's good then. I'm glad our dad's still alive.
So
and got
basically
his
all
money.
that was because she'd obviously spent all her mum's inheritance, clearly didn't want to get a job, was obviously living a life of comfortableness with money, and then was like, I want my dad's inheritance now, so I need to pop him off and I'll get his money.
Or you could have just went and asked your dad for money.
Yeah, but that's what I didn't understand, is like the fact that she was pissed off about him spending money out of her.
Why was he spending that money?
Why was he spending that money? That's the only thing, because there was I couldn't get a clarification on that reason, but that was obviously why she was annoyed at the bank, because her dad was spending, lots of money, big amounts of money, and she wasn't happy about that, because she obviously wanted the money all to herself by the sounds of it.
Yeah. So that is a bit weird, that part of it.
But it's but yeah, I mean, I'm obviously, as I said to you, I've seen like the pictures of that, of him sitting like, Brian, cross-legged, with this bomb around his neck and his hands behind his back. And
so what do you think that he was in on it?
I think he was. I truly believe that he obviously thought the bomb wasn't real.
Yeah. Because that's what I'm leaning towards. I mean, we could be wrong.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I could be wrong, and he could have been a completely innocent party in it, of course. But
but right from the start, I was like, why is he calm?
Yeah, like, why is he so calm?
Yeah.
Because to me, especially if at first he thought that was a real bomb, I would imagine he'd be more panicked about it, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, if you think you've got a real bomb around your neck, you're not going to... No, you can't be calm about it.
Well, exactly.
So if he thinks that he's got a fake bomb around his neck, then he must have been in on it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, yeah, to obviously, he's obviously in it to a point. Like,
yeah,
like obviously he didn't realise
that he was gonna.
Yeah, because like I say, the witness's face said that his face, the minute he heard the ticking, it was just like, this look of sheer panic over his face. So I
reckon that's what's happened.
He's been like, oh my God, this is actually real. Whereas before, because he was quite happy to tell, the police officers stuff and that. And alright, he was like, oh, why are you not getting off me? But, I was playing the part a bit as well. So, I don't know.
But, right, why? He's not got a mask or anything on. His face is being seen.
Yeah, that's true.
So, if he was in on it, And even if it was fake and they got the money, they've seen his face, so he's going to get put in jail for robbery.
Unless he thought, unless they were going to get away with it. But then I mean, obviously you see the CCTV footage of him in the bank where you clearly see his face.
Yeah.
So there was no way he was ever not going to be identified as doing that. So
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he could have been innocent, completely innocent.
Oh, see, now I'm changing my mind.
I don't know.
Because I just don't see why he would be in on that and not and
let
them see
that was
him.
the other thing, so I must have actually forgot to tell you, but that's what another reason why they thought he might have been in on it is, remember when whoever it was that phoned the pizza place, and when Tony answered the phone he couldn't make out what they were saying, and supposedly that was meant to be part of the plan, that they were meant to like talk absolute nonsense so the guy couldn't understand, so that he would then pass the phone to Brian so then he could deal with it. So that was another reason why the police thought that he might have been involved in it, because that was sort of set up like that to happen. But
right.
I mean,
I don't know.
Obviously we'll never truly know because they're all dead now, but obviously
you should have gave me that case and I could have done that case for my mysterious ones on Patreon.
That's true. But
because it's mysterious in a way that we don't really know
exactly
what happened.
You know, we don't know exactly what part, or we know what part he played, but we don't know how, if he was involved in actually, you know, or was he a truly innocent victim? See, you stole a case off me. I know. I could have done that. But I thought it was an interesting one.
Yeah, it was really interesting. But if anybody does want to listen to mysterious cases, go at patreon.com/CrimeDivers.
We are kind of like this, where we don't know what happens.
Yeah, we do have ones where, you know, people have went missing or mysterious deaths and things like that. Yeah. But anyway, that's patreon.com/CrimeDivers. Yes. But yeah, that was a really interesting one, but I really want to know if he was in on it or not, and we're never going to find out, are we?
We're never going to fully find out, unfortunately. So I'm sorry about that.
Oh well.
But thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Bye.
If you'd like to get in contact with us or follow us on our social media, we are on Instagram and Twitter at crime_divers_pod. You can email us at crime_divers_pod@outlook.com. We're on YouTube, and that's Crime Divers Podcast, and TikTok is also Crime Divers Podcast. If you would like to financially support the show, you could go to www.buymeacoffee.com/crimedivers and make a one-off donation. Our Patreon is patreon.com/crimedivers. We have 3 tiers, which is £1, £3 or £5, and you get bonus episodes, early access to episodes, and ad-free episodes.
And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review.